Hello, my dear students. Let us start a new lesson today. The Enemy by Pearl's Buck. In this module, you will get familiar with the writer Pearl's Buck and also you will be able to describe a scene. Let's learn something about the author. Pearl Sidenstricker Buck was an American writer and novelist. As the daughter of missionaries, Buck spent most of her life before 1934 in Zhenjiang, China. Her novel, The Good Earth, was the best-selling fiction book in the United States in 1931 and 1932 and won the Pulitzer Prize in 1932. Born 26 June 1892 in Hillsborough, West Virginia, United States, and died on 6 March 1973 in Danby, Vermont, United States. The movies that were based on her books were The Good Earth, Pavilion of Women, Dragon's Seed, Satan Never Sleeps, China Sky, China The Roots of Madness, and Guide. The awards she won were Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and Nobel Prize in Literature. The Enemy by Pearl's Buck. Before you read, it is the time of the World War. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot of the Japanese coast where, as a little boy, he often played. The low square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet as he had seen men do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, "Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." "Where shall we step from them?" Sadao had asked seriously. "Who knows?" his father had answered. "Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it." So in the first few lines, the author has described Sadao's house, the surroundings very clearly. We can picturize from her description. We can picturize how the house is, where it stands, everything. So you have to describe something like this so that the reader's mind will imagine, will picturize that scene. And his childhood was eventful. He used to climb on the trees, he used to go to the islands with his father. And when he went to the islands with his father used to tell him, "Those islands yonder, see the islands over there, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." Means from that islands begin Japan's future. From that island, we can step on to Japan's success. So he used to ask, "Where shall we step from them? From that islands, where are we going to step into?" So his father would answer, "Even I don't know, but we are the ones who are to make our future. We are the one to build up where we have to step into. We just have the stepping stones, but from there, where we have to step into is to be built by us." Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was his only son. Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. For this reason, he had been sent at 22 to America to learn all that could be learned of surgery and medicine. He had come back at 30, and before his father died, he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist. Because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean, he had not been sent abroad with the troops. Also, he knew there was some slight danger that the old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility Sadao was being kept in Japan. So in this paragraph, we know that Sadao's father was a very serious man. He was serious because he did not have time for any jokes or any entertainment. He was busy, hardworking to make money to teach his son. And Sadao knew it very well that his father was really working hard for him, and he did his part best. At the age of 22, he was sent to America, and there he learned medicine and surgery. And he came back when he was 30, and before his father died, Sadao had become famous. He had become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist, because he was inventing new medicines. Not only he was treating with the present medicines, he was inventing new medicines for diseases. And now he was on a work. He had already discovered a medicine to clean the wounds to heal the wounds very fast, but he was perfecting it. He was making it more perfect. So that's why he was not sent to the war. He was not sent with the soldiers to take part in the war. But and also there was another reason. The general of the army was in a medical condition. He was treated medically, and sometimes he might need an operation. For that, Sadao must be in Japan itself. That's why he was not sent to the war. He was not sent along with the army. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days had at night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Sadao watched Miss hideout lines of a little island near the shore and then come creeping up the beach below the house, wreathing around the pines. In a few minutes, fog would be wrapped about the house too. Then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. But at this moment the door opened and she looked out, a dark blue woolen haori over her kimono. She came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood, smiled and said nothing. He had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. His father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. He wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah, and by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance literally, at an American professor's house. The professor and his wife had been kind people anxious to do something for their few foreign students, and the students, though bored, had accepted this kindness. Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Hali's house that night. So, Sadao was standing in his veranda and watching the mist, the fog. Due to the warmth of the past few days, there had been a fog that day, and he was watching the fog covering an outline of an island, and then the fog was moving to his house. It was about to cover his house. Wreathing means cover. Wreathing around means cover around the pines. In a few minutes, the house also will be wrapped with a fog, will be covered with a fog. And so when the house will be covered with fog, he was thinking of going into his room where his wife and children were waiting. But at that time, his wife came out wearing an overcoat like thing over her kimono. Kimono is the traditional Japanese dress, and she was wearing haori, a woolen top. On the top of her kimono, she was wearing a woolen overcoat like dress. She came and she was showing her affection towards him. So he was going into his past. He was thinking, if he had not met Hannah, whom would he have married? And he was thinking how casually, without any effort, he had met Hannah. It was actually by chance he met her. He met her in an American professor's house when he was in America. Actually, the professor and his wife were anxious to help the foreign students, but they were not much interested in their help. They did not want to go to Professor Harley's house. And even Sadao was remembering that he was thinking of not going to his house because the rooms were really small, and the food was very bad, and the professor's wife was a very talkative lady, so he was thinking of not going to that house, but he went, maybe to meet Hannah. That was his destiny. The rooms were so small, the food so bad, the professor's wife so voluble. Voluble means talkative. But he had gone, and there he had found Hannah, a new student, and had felt he would love her if it were at all possible. And when he saw Hannah there, he liked her, but he did not start loving her until he knew that she is from Japan and belongs to his race. Only when he was sure of that, he started loving her. Now he felt her hand on his arm, and was aware of the pleasure it gave him, even though they had been married years enough to have the two children. For they had not married heedlessly in America. They had finished their work at school and had come home to Japan. And when his father had seen her, the marriage had been arranged in the old Japanese way. Although Sadao and Hannah had talked everything over beforehand, they were perfectly happy. She laid her cheek against his arm. So, even now, after they had two children and they were married for years now, but still their love is like they were in America. They had preserved their love even now. Though they had talked everything, they were in love from America, they did not marry in America without their parents' knowledge. They came back to Japan and talked to Sadao's father, and when he came and met, he went and met her, and then the marriage was arranged in a traditional Japanese way. They did not get hurried. They were not in a hurry to marry from America itself. They waited for their parents' consent. They waited for their parents to arrange their marriage. And still they were very happy. They were affectionate towards each other. It was at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mist. It was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean, flung, it seemed, to his feet by a breaker. He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist, his arms above his head. Then the curled mist hit him again. So here also the author has described this scene very clearly. We can picturize this scene. And when they were affectionately sitting in the standing in the veranda, they saw something black come out of the mist. It was a man, and he was thrown out of the ocean. And seeing his footsteps, they thought that he was really thrown out because he was very unsteady. He staggered. He was about to fall, and again he was covered with mist. They could not see him again. So at that time, let's see what happened. Who is that? Hannah cried. She dropped Sadao's arm, and they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. Now they saw him again. The man was on his hands and knees, crawling. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. A fisherman, perhaps, Sadao said, washed from his boat. He ran quickly down the steps, and behind him, See, again, when the mist was cleared, they could see him standing on his knees and hands because he could not stand up and on his both the feet. He was crawling, and then they saw him fall down onto the ground. So Sada was telling maybe it is a fisherman washed from his boats. So that's for today. Now let me ask you a few questions. Why did Sadao's father never joke or play with him? Why was Sadao not sent abroad with the troops? Where did Sadao meet Hannah? Try answering these questions. Now it's an overview. This is the story of a Japanese doctor, Sadao Hoki, and his wife Hana, who live happily in their home on the Japanese coast with World War II as the backdrop. Sadao Hoki and his wife are educated in America, so despite living in Japan among people with conservative mindsets, they have a broad outlook. At the same time, they are very proud of their Japanese traditions and lineage. The Japanese couple rushes down to help and realizes that the man washed on the shore is a white man, a sailor of the US Navy, as was faintly visible from his cap. Now these are the new words that we learned today. Yonder, at some distance in the direction indicated. Wreathing, covering. Voluble, talking fluently. Flung, thrown. Staggered, walked or moved unsteadily. Now today's activities. As our author Pearl S. Buck has described the scenes very clearly, you have to describe this picture. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye. Take care.